and that therapist doesn't want to be a part of that, that therapist has some fixed idea of why they should justify in their own mind just giving 2 units of care for a 45, 55-minute session, and that patient's paying that same $40 copay whether they're seeing them or they see me, and I'm going to deliver 4 units of care, tell you what, that patient's going to want to see me and not them. So hey everybody, this is a big source of frustration for a lot of owners, and that is, how do I get my therapist to optimize their coding for the work that they're doing? How do I convince my therapist to stop undermining themselves, stop depreciating their value within the profession and with our patients? Because that's really the viewpoint from an owner. So I think there's 3 bridges we have to cross. So let's cross these 3 bridges. If you're going to have a physical therapist working inside your practice, practicing at the top 10% of their license, you're going to have to cross bridge number 1, knowledge and education, or education and knowledge on charging and coding. It's not really charging, it's really just coding for the services that they render. So let's just stick with that terminology, because really that's in reality all that is. There's not a physical therapist on planet Earth that does any billing or any charging or anything such as that. They have nothing to do with billing. That is not them. They are actually clinicians who are providing the services, writing a note, and then representing what they wrote in their note by using the codes that the computer system can actually identify and read. So knowledge and understanding is number 1. Number 2, it's all about application. Okay, so now that they have the knowledge and understanding, it's about the application. It's about the consistency, the compliance of that application. It's one thing to understand something, it's another thing to apply it. Once you apply new knowledge, you have skill development. So number 2 is really skill development, the application, the consistency, the compliance with what they've learned. So knowledge and education first, compliance second, and then third would be motivation. What is their motivation? So let's cross these 3 bridges. Knowledge first, bridge 1, compliance second, and number 3 would be motivation, okay? So let's do this. Knowledge and education. First of all, we have to unwind or rewind some of the bad habits that some of our clinicians might have, because they're thinking this is all about charging and running up the bill and charging the patients more money, and the owner wants to buy a bigger boat or whatever they've got going on in their head. They've been told possibly from academia that, don't do more than you actually did, count your minutes. None of this was intended to be like that. The system was never intended to do that. It was intended to, root out fraud and abuse. But it never was intended for you to count your seconds on where you are in each and every movement of your day. Did you do it? Did you spend the time doing it? Did you cross the 8-minute mark on doing it, not just 3 minutes and out? But you can add your time between the manual therapy techniques you're using or the therapeutic exercise techniques you're using, all within that session, to get a cumulative code that satisfies the benchmark or the bar that you need to be able to use that code. So what do I mean by that? This comes to the education. Every therapist should understand that there's a commercial rule, the AMA rule, of the 8-minute rule. Every time you do 8+ minutes of any one code, therapeutic exercise, functional activities, manual therapy, neuromuscular rehab, whatever that may be in that direct procedural code, that timed code, you can use that code. You can indicate that you provided that service because you did ample amount of time of that hands-on service or that one-on-one service. If it's a Medicare patient, you're talking the 8 to 23-minute rule, and everybody should be good with the 8 to 23-minute rule by now. 8 minutes for the first unit, 23 you can charge 2, 38 you can charge 3, and so on and so forth. If you're keeping every single patient inside your clinic 55 to 65 minutes, there should be no trouble, even if you're crossing over patients, to go back and forth, use unattended modalities or untimed codes, use care extenders, not to bill for the care extenders, but appropriately use them, and do really good point of service documentation. You should have no trouble maintaining above 3.75 units per visit. For any therapist who digs their heels in the sand and tries to be right on this comment when they're actually spending that time with their patient, they have an efficiency problem. Their clinical efficiency, their ability to move around within the session and stop jabbering and keep getting their head down and doing the work, is really where you want to dig in. Out reality. Their out reality is what's keeping them from it. See, they have some degree of fear because it may have been inserted from their previous employer or from what they read or from academia. Fear is just a false reality that they're going in agreement with. It's an appearance of a falsehood that they're just agreeing with. You have to eliminate that fear by educating them on how to properly use the codes with the proper intent. If I'm using therapeutic exercise with a TheraBand with the intent of strengthening the deltoid, I will use 97110. That's the code that represents the intent of my therapeutic intervention. If I'm doing it to simulate putting milk in the fridge, I'll use 97530 because I'm encouraging or I'm repatterning a functional activity. How many of you owners, my question to you is this, ask yourself, how many of you have spent the time to educate your therapist on the proper use of these codes? How many of you have put a problem list out, questions and answers, where they have some resource to go to? Put it in writing, role play it. If you really want to make a change in your practice, you should identify the things that are hanging up your therapist. Those are the questions. Role play the situation, institute the solutions, and then hold them compliant to those solutions. Anybody who digs their heels in has it wrong if, in fact, you are rooted in fact in how you're rolling out your system, how you're rolling out your utilization. This is very, very well documented. In Meg Academy, we're shooting an entire chapter on the intent and proper use of codes so that people can really have something to go by as a benchmark, so they've heard it from an authority, somebody who's a third party, not them, not their owner, not their boss, not their peer, not their academic professor, but somebody who's actually been teaching and training and instituting this for 30 plus years, so they can take some confidence that since I said it on the stage at PPS, since it's been recorded, since it's been filmed, you should pretty much be comfortable that it is, as we say it is to be, used. There's other professionals too. Don't just take it from myself. I mean, there's other coaches and consultants out there that have been lecturing on this for decades. So the material's there. The owners normally know it. You have to dispel the false impressions, the falsehoods, the altered reality that many of your clinicians are coming in with. And you're going to have to do that through education. But you got to do it through education, duplication, and application. They literally need to learn in writing what it is, the right way to do things. They need a Q&A role play, and then they need to apply it. And that brings me to my next one, compliance. You need to have some qual officer overseeing the documentation, making sure that the codes match the time matches the note matches the codes. That is your responsibility as an owner to hold in quality assurance, to hold in the performance, to hold in the behavior, so that person is demonstrating that skill set you just instructed them on every single time, routinely, every single day. Now, depending on how you do your schedule, there's going to be a certain amount of codes that one should be expected to perform with each and every engagement. Question. Well, Brian, what do I do when a therapist insists on, it's unethical and this is just what they chose to do this day and this is their autonomy and they have the right of choice? They're a licensed professional. My answer to that question is they do have the right of choice. You also have the right of choice to choose for them not to be working in your practice. If somebody's going to come in here and defy the attitude, the practice philosophy, the patient culture, where we put our patients first, where we're trying to utilize the giving an abundance of care with each and every engagement, treat an abundance of people in our community, because if we can give better care, more care, high volume of care to more people, we're in essence actually improving the quality of our community and our society, and that therapist doesn't want to be a part of that. That therapist has some fixed idea of why they should justify in their own mind just giving 2 units of care for a 45, 55-minute session, and that patient's paying that same $40 copay whether they're seeing them or they see me, and I'm going to deliver 4 units of care. Tell you what, that patient's going to want to see me and not them. This is what it really comes down to. It comes down to real professional ethics. And you as a practice owner need to hold in the bar of professional ethics that you agree with for your practice. Don't backpedal. Don't shy away. Don't feel like this is a eggshell conversation and you're worried and nervous. Don't let fear hold you back from standing up with what you know is right. Oh, Brian, therapists are hard to find. What do I do if they threaten to leave? Then they're not on your team to begin with. If they're threatening to leave because you're holding them accountable to performing at a professional level, practicing at the top 10% of their license, optimizing the amount of care and the volume of care that they can deliver to a patient, and they don't want any part of that, they don't belong in your clinic. I would rather go without and have a waiting list than continue to have somebody who's going to turn into a cancer in my practice or potentially turn the shade of colors or turn the mood or attitude of other people around me, my other staff, and now I lose 2 staff members or 3 staff members, all because of this person. Because when people are wrong, they try to get agreement with other people to make themselves feel right. That is the challenge you have as an owner, not to let happen in your practice. You're the authority figure. You're the person who's taking full responsibility. You're the educator. You're the quality assurance officer, educator, because you're really in it for the right reasons of helping the patient get as much care as they can with each engagement, as many engagements as needed, and achieve the Net Promoter Score of 9 or above, optimum outcomes, and a patient satisfaction survey that is second to none. If your employee, if your therapist is not interested in achieving that, and they're interested in doing what they think is best for themselves, then they're not wearing your jersey. They're not on your team, and they should go. Motivation. This is the third bridge you should cross, is motivation. I believe motivation is probably the number one thing I look for in the interview. It starts in the interview process. Where have you been? What didn't you like with what you were doing? Why didn't you like it? Why are you interviewing here? What are you seeking to achieve in your next job? These are all questions I would ask. Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? Some people, I can't even see that far. Where do you see yourself in 2 years? What brings you the greatest joy and pride in being a physical therapist? Why did you go into physical therapy? That question only has 2 answers. I can't think of another answer. If you can think of one, please write, put in the comments below, send it to me. Really, let me know, because I think the only 2 reasons to become a physical therapist is to gain the skills and knowledge and ability to help as many people in my community achieve optimum health. I want to get my hands on as many people as I can. I'll tell you what, when I was a clinician and people would come in and see me and they'd be on my evaluation, I bring them back and I'm doing my eval and writing their plan of care. In my mind, I would think to myself, how blessed I am. How grateful I was to have this patient, have this hour engagement with this individual, because there are 12 other clinics within 2 miles of my clinic. They could have picked any one of those offices and been treated by any one of those people, but they're here seeing me. And because they're here seeing me, they're the most important person in my universe, in my world, in my mind at that minute in time. And I'm going to treat them as such. And I'm going to give them as much care as I can to see that they achieve their most optimum health for themselves. I don't care where they were and then they got injured. I don't care about getting them back to where they were. I care about getting them to exceed where they were. I assume no one's living the healthiest life they can, and how can I actually get them to the highest level? That's why my clinic had an aftercare program, personal fitness training and massage, and that we could outsource some nutrition consulting, because it didn't really work well in-house. I would think beyond the discharge, thinking beyond the discharge. So that's number 1. Number 2, I want to gain as many skills and as much clinical knowledge and expertise and professionalism as I possibly could, because with each and every engagement, I want to throw the kitchen sink at them. I want to give them the abundance of care I can so that patient walks out of there going, wow, that wasn't shake and bake. That wasn't just putting me on a bike, watching me run, put me on heat and stim and sending me home. That wasn't YouTube. I could have done that at home watching YouTube. Bob and Brad are pretty darn good at what they do. You've got to at least do better than that. You've got to give an abundance of care that the person is thoroughly impressed, wowed, and blown out, and they can't wait to get back because they're now part of your family, because that is the culture you're practicing in. If you can't get a therapist to be that level of motivation, have that level of motivation, act in that manner, then they're not they're not on your team. You're not losing anything. You haven't done a good enough job to onboard that person into your company culture that they value it as much as you do. That's your responsibility. In Meg Academy, that's what I try to do each and every day when I get on front and I shoot a video, I shoot a role play, I create another piece of material or handout, is how can I better engage the owner? How can I better engage their management team, engage their staff, so they feel that they can take great pride in what they're learning, because it's going to benefit not only them, but the patients and the practice. That's my hopes and dreams for you. That's my wishes. If you'd like, go ahead, check out our website, www.megbusiness.com. Get a practice assessment call with me, and I'll help you move along that journey so you can live the ideal life of a practice owner that you deserve.